officials reported more than 1,000 daily gotaways, meaning more than 1,000 illegal border crossers are escaping apprehension each day. As illegal border crossers attempt to evade arrest, they travel across our federal lands. For example, between 2017 and 2020, National Park Service rangers apprehended 1,231 illegal aliens in just the Oregon Pipe Cactus National Monument. As the Biden border crisis continues to leave our southern border insecure, we can only expect for our rangers to apprehend more illegal aliens on our federal lands. My amendment would dedicate a portion of the funding for the National Park Service Civilian Climate Corps to projects that address the harms caused by illegal border crossers. By supporting these projects, not only will our federal lands be rehabilitated, but cleanups will remove hazardous materials that endanger officers keeping our lands safe. And I yield back, Mr.
Thank you. Let me recognize myself in opposition to the amendment. If if the gentlelady is interested, I and many of my colleagues would be happy to invest in cleaning up the southern border for a variety of reasons. Included in that is the obvious point that many of us would make is that we think that one of the most wasteful, if not the most wasteful, pollution issue that we have on these public lands that abut the border has been the wasteful, destructive, and really ineffective border southern wall that was all the craze for the previous 4 years. And I know, and that is still being dealt with. And however, this committee print is about investing in the climate and job creation, not going into dealing with a political agenda of any kind. And we've been, at least I've tried to be as clear about that. We have different priorities, that's one thing, but there is no political agenda that should be included that would jeopardize the overall ability of this package to move forward into a real serious Senate discussion. So with that, I just believe it's misplaced and and doesn't understand the real issue of the crisis of the border and the real task before us today. With that, I yield back and would recognize anybody who wants to speak to the amendment.
Representative Tiffany.
Representative Tiffany, you're recognized. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise in full support of Representative Boebert's amendment here. And obviously, based on your comments that you just shared, you're not studying what has happened on the southern border, because a year ago I went there in June, first trip I took after being elected, and local law enforcement and state officials were saying the border wall works. It funnels people to entry points where the United States of America can vet people and make sure they are who they are. It isn't simply to keep people out. It is to funnel them to appropriate entry points so we know who's coming in. The threat to our country has just went up significantly over the last week. We've seen Yemenis that were interdicted months ago, back in February and March, coming across the border, who were on the terrorism watch list, one of them being as high as you can get on the terrorism watch list. And now with Afghanistan in full control of ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and the Taliban, we are hearing from world sources that the terrorism threat has never been higher. And that was the purpose of the wall. And it was working. All you had to do is talk to local sheriffs, county sheriffs in Arizona, as many of us have, and they told us that the wall does work. Now, it's not the only answer, but it's one of the critical components in being able to make sure that we know who's coming in and out of our country. I understand you have an open borders philosophy, but that does not protect the safety and security of Americans. And we've seen the safety and security of Americans be left behind here over the last couple weeks. We should not make the same mistake. And Representative Boebert's amendment is right on mark here. I urge everyone to vote for this amendment if you believe in protecting the safety and security of Americans. I yield back.
Goes back. Anyone else wish to be recognized? Hearing no further debate, the question is on the board. Somebody seeks to be recognized?
Yes, Gosar is.
Mr. Gosar, you're recognized.
Yes, having been one of those participants over and over again, cleaning up the mess left behind on the border, I think this is a fabulous amendment in regards to all the drugs that are found on the ground, the crack pipes, the desecration of the habitat for, some of the most critical species because of the rainfall and nutritional value out there for them. So, the comment that this is not political, give me a break. Everything that you're talking about today is politically oriented. I'm sorry if we have to call it like it is, but that's what it is. Everything from talking about tree spikes and not holding people accountable to all the climate aspects, the climate details, to forest management, to shutting down mines on lands that aren't even a jurisdiction to some of the folks that are holding it up. I guess I just got to tell you, this markup is your push, your side's push to get something done. It's not my agenda. We have a different agenda. So let's make something perfectly clear. We're not in favor of many of the things on here. There are some of the things that I think we do very, very well together. But when we see something like this in a very partisan fashion, I find it offensive. And so from that standpoint, I think the gentlelady's got a perfect amendment here to direct some of those funds to the desecration of these public lands. Down in the chairman's zone district in San Luis, you had the BLM has sections of land that don't allow people to even clean it up. So this is at very best a very good amendment to direct funds where they're so needed. And last but not least, the people that live on the border, they're no different than anybody from the interior or throughout the country. They deserve the same type of respect, maintenance of their properties of the federal state as anybody else. I find it very discouraging that we would hold them at a different standard than the rest of us. I yield back.
Anyone else seek to be recognized? Boebert Amendment number 1.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it's Yvette Harrell.
Representative, you're recognized for 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just urge everybody to support this bill. Living in a border state where we have 180 miles of southern border, I think this hits the mark, and I really appreciate her bringing this forward. What I find fascinating is other committee hearings that we've had. We've always had this discussion about protecting our public lands and ensuring our lands are well maintained and the conservation efforts. And this just plays right into that. This is absolutely part of the bigger dialogue and things that this committee and bipartisan support has happened on this committee as well with other bills and amendments that have been passed. But to protect our public lands, I think we have to look at the bigger picture. And this amendment does just that. So I would urge everybody to support this. And if you haven't been down to the border, please go. I represent 180 miles, and the destruction that we've seen through trash and stolen property, broken fences, lost livestock, loss of life, it's devastating. And so I would encourage everyone to support this as another step to protect our public lands. So thank you, Congresswoman Boebert, and I yield the balance of my time to Ranking Member Westerman.
I thank the gentlelady, and I also support this amendment. Representative Boebert's amendment is very similar to the amendment that I had to direct 10% of the Fish and Wildlife Civilian Climate Corps funds to be used for damage caused by illegal border crossers, and I appreciate the chair accepting that on unanimous consent. This bill allocates $1.7 billion to the National Park Service Civilian Climate Corps, and the amendment simply moves 10% of that, or $170 million, towards repairing our federal lands. As you know, we disagree with the idea of spending all this money on the Climate Corps, but if you're going to spend it, we hope you would at least focus some of it on repairing damage along the southern border. I've had the chance to visit in Arizona and in Texas and in New Mexico along the border, and I've witnessed some of this damage on public lands and private lands. Unfortunately, there's nothing that the government's doing or nothing in this bill that will help repair damage on private lands that's been caused by the government's failure to secure our border. There's 195 miles of the southern border that the National Park Service manages. And this amendment recognizes those consequences and presents a way to counteract them. We think this is a proactive step to help mitigate the border. You know, we've already seen the Park Service spend $20 million in the Oregon Pipe Cactus National Monument after damage was caused by illegal border crossers. And we know the damage is much greater than that when you consider the whole southern border. So again, I support the gentlelady's amendment, and I yield back to Ms. Harrell.
Thank you, Ranking Member. I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're muted, Mr. Chairman.
I will pause so the members in favor can unmute, and all those in favor indicate by saying